Welcome back to Newsmax Now. Trump's been dominating the headlines, but so has George W. Bush. He's facing some harsh criticism for allegedly being paid $100,000 to appear at a charity event for wounded veterans. Here's what both sides had to say.
For him to be paid to raise money for veterans that were wounded in combat under his orders, I don't think that's right. You sent me to war. I was doing what you told me to do, and I have no regrets. But it's kind of a slap in the face.
That's George Bush's conscience. That's up to George Bush, really. It's up to George Bush. I can understand why they would be offended, but it's not the charity's fault that George Bush got paid.
And that is a great place to bring in our roundtable on this Friday. Joining us is Terry Jeffrey. He is the editor-in-chief of CNS News, and Ron Hosko, former assistant director to the FBI. Thank you both for joining us. Ron, before we get to you about security issues, Terry, I want to get your take on what Trump had to say about this issue. He tweeted, Jeb's brother George insisted on a $100,000 fee and $20,000 for a private jet to speak at a charity for severely wounded vets. Not very nice. Now, is it fair to bring Jeb into this? What do you think, Terry?
Well, I guess Jeb can make his own comment and say what he thinks about it. I think first, it's a free country, so the former president has the right to ask somebody to remunerate him to do something, and the charity has a right to pay him if that's what he wishes. But I do think that if the former president of the United States is in fact a quite wealthy man, and I assume he is, and this is what he believes is a worthy charity that does good work for veterans, that he could set a good moral example for the country for not just doing something for free, but maybe contributing some money to that charity. So, I do think someone who's president is in the bully pulpit when they're president. They're also in the bully pulpit after they've left the office, and they are a role model. And if, what's been reported is completely accurate, I think it didn't really send a good signal to the country.
Ron, a lot of the Bush supporters are pointing Bill Clinton in 1 year made over $100 million in speeches, and they said that George W. Bush's appearance helped that organization raise $2.5 million the year he spoke. The year previous, they made just $1 million. Still, I want to hear your thoughts on it. Do you think it was, obviously the optics don't look good, but what are your thoughts?
Well, unfortunately, President Bush sent young men to war, and many of them died, and many of them were seriously and permanently injured because of their sacrifice for our country. So in this one occasion, I think it would be a wonderful gesture by the president to donate his fee back to the charity, particularly because of this cause and because of his relationship to it. But Mr. Bush is no longer in government service, and he gets to make those decisions for himself. We all know that the Clintons have made millions and millions after the president's tour as president.
Ron, I want to talk about security. Some big headlines this week that the government, or officials rather, were able to thwart terror attacks on 4th of July. 10 people were arrested. Should we be on heightened alert?
We absolutely should be. The FBI and partners had picked up on chatter, for lack of a better term, indicating ISIS's desire for attacks around the holiday, a uniquely American holiday, the 4th of July, and for attacks during the month of Ramadan, which coincided with the 4th of July this year. And just because we've been able to make it through the 4th of July, these are dedicated foes who are learning from us, learning from what law enforcement does. They have turned out to be master propagandists. And so I think this threat is very real, and it requires every American to be paying attention.
And Terry, it was troubling in that recent congressional committee meeting when Defense Secretary Ashton Carter said that the U.S. had only trained 60 Syrian rebels in the fight against ISIS. Just where are we going wrong? What can we do? And this is obviously going to be a big campaign issue.
Well, I think the administration's policy in Syria is idiotic. Its desire to throw Bashar al-Assad out of power is completely mindless. We'd create a power vacuum in Syria into which ISIS would rise. ISIS's big rival in Syria is al-Nusra Front, which is actually the al-Qaeda affiliate there. What we saw in Iraq was Saddam Hussein was a secular authoritarian. He was an evil guy. There's no doubt about it. He wasn't a good person. But he was able to suppress the Sunni Islamists who became ISIS. In fact, ISIS existed as Abu Musab al-Zarqawi's terrorist group prior to our intervention in Iraq. But Saddam was able to keep that element down and control them. We created a power vacuum in Iraq, and now the Sunni area of Iraq is largely controlled by ISIS. The government of Iraq basically controls the Shia area. Bashar al-Assad is an Alawite, which is sort of a subsect of Shia Islam. It's a very unique religion, but it's considered part of Islam.
Terry, thank you. We appreciate the context. I wish we could talk to you gentlemen more. Thank you so much, Terry Jeffrey and Ron Hosko, giving us some insight right here on Newsmax Now. We're coming right back with more on Donald Trump.